So maybe we can start. Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you to this afternoon session of the Facilitative Sharing of Views. As per the schedule, I'm pleased to invite the representative from Montenegro, Mr. Serjan Mugosa, General Director of the Directorate for Climate Change within the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Tourism, to deliver his brief presentation. Montenegro, you have the floor.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniela Račić. I'm working at Ministry of Sustainable Development and Tourism, Directorate for Climate Change. First of all, I'm very happy because I'm here and because I will present first biennial update report on my country, Montenegro. And now I can start. National context, Montenegro became a party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, as a non-Annex 1 party on 27 January 2007. The Kyoto Protocol was ratified in 2007. Considering that EU accession is a national priority, the approximation of national legislation to parts of the EU acquis regarding to the environment and climate change represents a process during which the national legal framework should be strongly and increasingly shaped. In preparation of the BUR participated our Ministry of Sustainable Development and Tourism, Ministry of Economy, Monstat is a statistical office, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Project started date in June 2014 and the date of completion December 2015. Montenegro national context. Montenegro can be characterized by the following parameters. General characteristics. The area of the country is 308,012 square kilometer. Mountains country, large water coverage, high quality groundwater, territorial seawater totals approximately 2,540 square kilometer. Coastal zone represents 11% of the total territory. Agricultural land represents 22.4% of the total territory. Forests cover more than 60% of the national territory. Biodiversity hotspot in the Mediterranean area. Protected areas represent 11% of the territory. And most important problems environment are for air and water pollution and waste management. On this slide, we have basic economic and social characteristics. Montenegro has 5 stationary emitters, thermal power plant Pljevlja, aluminum plant Podgorica, Vektrajakić Pljevlja, wood industry, brewery Trebjesa Nikšić, and iron works Nikšić. Country-specific issues. 2 majority emitters in Montenegro are thermal power plant Pljevlja and aluminum plant. As the total annual national emissions of GHG without removes are at a level of 4,000 gigagram of carbon dioxide EQ, it can be seen that emissions from thermal power plant Pljevlja and aluminum plant could each individually represent up to 45%, and that both together could represent up to 19%. On this slide, we have present GHG inventory. The period of reporting include 19.9 per 2030 year. Montenegro's contribution to total global emissions is 0.009%. And the total emissions with sinks range from minus 364.57 gigagram carbon dioxide EQ in 1994 to 4,703.27 gigagram in 1991. High levels of carbon dioxide sinks are the consequence of large forest areas in Montenegro, while low levels of estimated emissions from agriculture are partly due to the incomplete estimation of emissions due to a lack of statistical data. This fact, as well as negative economic trends and the continuous decline of industrial production, has resulted in relevantly low levels of emission being recorded in some of the years during the observed period. On this slide, we present the total GHG emission expressed the carbon dioxide EQ by sector for the period 1990 per 2030 gigagram for the sector energy, industrial process, agriculture and land use, waste, and total emission with sinks and without sinks. On this slide, we have two charts who present total GHG emission as carbon dioxide with sinks for the period 1990 to 2030 gigagram and without sinks. On this slide, the carbon dioxide represented the greatest share of the total GHG emissions, 24.6% to 74.5%, followed by tetrafluoromethane and hexafluorethane, which represented between 3% and 14.9%. Methane represented between 10% and 27.5%, and the nitrous oxide represented between 2.3% and 5.8%. Sulfur hexafluoride represented the smallest share in the total emissions produced and ranged from 0.01 and 5.8%. 0.01, sorry, to 0.07%, in line with the data that was available at the time of recalculating the inventory chlorine fluorocarbons emissions in the 2012 and 2030 were only estimated for subsector product use as a substitute for ozone depleting substances, refrigeration, and air conditioning. On this slide, we present total percent emissions for four sectors: agriculture, waste, industry, and energy sector. On this slide, we present analysis of key emission sources and inventory completeness. The analysis of key sources and inventory completeness was produced based on the methodology provided by IPCC using a TR1 approach. Mitigation actions and effects. Montenegro has developed two realistic scenarios: scenario with measures, VM scenario, and scenario without measures. Scenario without measures, which include the original VM scenario extended by additional measures that are not required by EU legislation, or measures which EU legislation allows flexibility regarding certain quantified requirements. And the scenario with measures VM includes 40 measures: introduction of best available technology in energy and industry installation, two measures for thermal power plant Pljevlja and aluminum plant, and other measures for energy sector, transport, forestry, agriculture, waste management, tourism and service, and horizontal cross-cutting issues. We have priorities. The VM and VAM scenario do not include all the possible measures that could lead to a reduction in the level of GHG emission. Only the priority measures have been included, those for which sustainable reduction potential in the GHG emissions can be expected in many cases also along with positive side effects. The 20 priority measures have been divided into three categories: top category, high category, and medium priorities. On this slide, we have conclusion for measures. It is evident that the full implementation of VM scenario could lead to a gross reduction in GHG emissions of more than 375 gigagram carbon dioxide EQ year from 2024, after the decommissioning of thermal power plant Pljevlja first, and its replacement by thermal power plant Pljevlja second, in comparison with 2013. Description of domestic MRV system. As an EU candidate country, Montenegro is at the beginning of the process of developing its own MRV system under mitigation action. And the steps proposed for the establishment of MRV system in Montenegro include the following: precise definition of institutional arrangement and process, definition of GHG mitigation action and accounting, establishment of data collection and reporting responsibilities, establishment of clear and transparent reporting obligations, and verification and quality assurance. During the preparation, first biennial update report, Montenegro have many obstacles and barriers for national GHG inventory, agriculture, forestry and land use sector, IPPU sector, NAMA and energy sector. Support received and needed financing, technology, capacity building. The institutional setup and the capacity of the state have shown evident progress over recent years. However, there still needs gaps and obstacles that impede the future development of climate-related activities. Currently available financial, technical and capacity building support still cannot meet the growing requirements related to the challenges of climate change. Bilateral technical cooperation across all sectors needs to be enhanced and expanded. Technology support received and needed financing, technology, capacity building. Technology required for the purpose of climate change mitigation. Energy efficient technology in all sectors of the economy and in the housing and commercial sectors. Technology that uses renewable energy sources, hydro, wind, solar and biomasses. Technology designed to efficiently use water, land, forest, coastal area and other natural resources. The introduction of low carbon modern technology, this will require continuous cooperation with international organization and institution, along with a review of the best practices and the implementation of various projects supported by international donors. Financial needs concerning climate change mitigation. A number of mitigation activities have already taken place in the country. The government is still working on securing additional financial resources. Thus, under IPA 2, Montenegro has been allocated 37.5 million for environment and 32.1 million for transport for the period 2014 and 2020. Capacity building needed for mitigation proposes. Further support is needed to continue developing and consolidating existing technical and institutional capacities, along with efforts to integrate climate change into national policies, programs and plans. Enhancing transparency of reporting and areas for improvement. First, the biennial update report in Montenegro has been prepared on the first time. Measures are elaborated in detail and sorted by priority VM and additional measures 1. The technical analysis has contributed to improve capabilities in reporting. It is important to point out that the mitigation measures in the field of climate change be taken into account in the planning of sectoral policies, because their sector in their development documents have not been taken into account this. Montenegro's government has decided to strengthen the administrative capacity until 2020 in the Directorate for Climate Change and Environmental Protection Agency. And we have the answer to question that we received during QA period is methodology for assessing mitigation action, and it has been submitted from New Zealand. And our answer with question, the report provides data on the preparation of the greenhouse gas GHG inventories for 2012 and 2030, and on the update of the inventories for the period 1990 to 2011. For the first time, the 2006 methodology of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, was applied. And it required the recalculation of the entire time series 1990 to 2011 of the inventory produced based on the 1996 methodology for the proposals of the second National Communication on Climate Change. The software tool of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was used to prepare the inventory, but which used other methodology. During the preparation, the second national communication, we used the methodology IPCC 1996, and for energy sector, we used LEAP, a longer range energy alternatives planning. Thank you for your attention, and that's it.
Thank you, Montenegro. Please also let me reiterate that parties should limit only with 2 questions to ask to the parties undergoing the facilitative sharing of views, and I will collect a set of questions from the parties. Now, the floor is now open for the questions. Yes, European Union. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Montenegro for the very good presentation and also for your first VUR, answering our questions as well in the written phase. You mentioned in your presentation that there is an incomplete estimation of emissions, and that you also find some barriers in some sectors, including energy. Taking this into account, could you tell us what are your highest priorities in relation to greenhouse gas inventory improvements? Thank you.
Now, New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on the publication of your first biennial update report, and thank you for the answer you provided on our written question prior to the start of the session. Could you please inform us of any particular experiences or learnings from the technical analysis process that will help with the production of the next BUR? Thank you.
And also, please, let's hear Mexico, and then we will give floor to Montenegro to answer this first set of questions.
Thank you very much. Mexico also wants to congratulate Montenegro for the first BUR and for sharing with us their experience in this report and the technical review. We want to pose a question regarding the technology requirements. Particularly, we found very interesting the requirements on water, land, forest, and coastal and other natural resources technologies. So we will be interested in learning more about what Montenegro thinks it would be useful for them in this matter. Thank you very much.
Montenegro, the floor is yours for your answers. Thank you.
Sorry, my own English is not perfect, but I can try to answer. For GHG inventory, the Environmental Protection Agency responsibilities for GHG inventory chapter and first biennial update report include period 1999 to 2030. Montenegro currently developing standardized templates for the purposes of data collection. This information system will cover the data needed for the GHG inventory. Also, Montenegro will improve the data for forestry and agriculture during and waste during preparation the second biennial update report. Include improve MRV system and involve the gender equality. Institutional arrangements for New Zealand. Institutional arrangements, sorry. During the preparation of the first biennial update report, we are involved the Ministry of Sustainable Development and Tourism, who has key responsibilities in the area of climate change. The ministry is responsible for policy making and for adopting relevant regulations. Ministry of Economy also plays an important role in the area of climate change by creating energy policies and by establishing objectives and measures to increase energy efficiency. Monstat is statistical office who is responsible for statistical data, and Environment Protection Agency who has responsibilities for preparing GHG inventory. The drafting, sorry. For the Mexico, sorry, I don't know your question, but I will delegate the question after come in Montenegro. That's okay? Thank you. Sorry. I don't know. I don't have sufficient experience, and I don't involved on preparation first biennial update report. And coastal area, I don't know really. Sorry.
Thank you, Montenegro, for your answers. I think you can also share some more information later, I guess. And now, Germany, you have the floor for your question.
Thank you, and thank you also to Montenegro for the presentation and some of the answers already provided. I would like to follow up on the needs for capacity building. You said in your presentation you identified some barriers, but also thanks to the technical analysis, you have improved the capabilities for the reporting. So my question would be, to what extent the priorities or what the team of technical experts has identified as part of the technical analysis, to what extent it was also your priorities that you had identified beforehand while you did the BUR exercise? Thank you.
Now, the US, please.
Thank you, and I'd like to commend Montenegro for applying the 2006 IPCC guidelines in their BUR greenhouse gas inventory, and also for submitting a very high quality greenhouse gas inventory. It was noted that the Montenegro greenhouse gas inventory team continues to need administrative and financial assistance in completing the inventory. So my question is, has Montenegro set up institutional arrangements to meet these needs? And if you could describe your experience with that. Thanks.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, Brazil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Montenegro, for your presentation. My question is very short. I understand from your BUR that you have recently adopted a national climate change strategy. So if you could highlight the main areas of your strategy, I'll be most grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for these questions, and now the questions are come to an end, I hope. Now, please, Montenegro, the floor is yours for the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I answer Brazil. We adopted the National Strategy for Climate Change, 17 September 2015. And in the strategy, our strategy involved the INDC. And INDC is in progress and will be finished in June in order to ratify the Paris Agreement. Thank you. And the institutional arrangements, during the preparation of the first biennial update report, were involved the Ministry Sustainable Development and the Tourism, has who key responsible in the area of climate change. The ministry is responsible for policy making and for adopting relevant regulations. Ministry of Economy also plays an important role in the area of climate change by creating energy policies and by establishing objectives and measures to increase energy efficiency. And Monstat, who is responsible for statistical data, and Environmental Protection Agency, who has responsibilities for preparing GHG inventory. And that's it. And Germany, technical assistance and capacity building provided. Montenegro has been granted significant capacity building and technical assistance for a number of programs, projects, and partnerships by the following donors: European Commission and the World Bank, GIZ, governments of Italy, Germany, Luxembourg, Austria, Norway, Netherlands, Greece, and etc. The greatest share has been provided by the European Commission and the UN, who have supported projects, workshops, studies, invitations, and specific programs of considerable impact regarding overview, capacity strengthening, and technical assistance. That's it. That's it.
Thank you, Montenegro.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, now let's move on to Morocco. I would like to invite the representative from Morocco, Mr. Bouzekri Razi, to deliver his brief presentation. The floor is yours, Morocco.
Thank you, Chair. Dear representatives of the parties, first of all, Morocco would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide its first inputs to the facilitative sharing of views in the context of international consultation and analysis. Morocco sees international consultation and analysis as a cornerstone for building trust between developing and industrialized countries in the context of climate change mitigation. For many years, Morocco has been a pioneer in mitigation efforts on the African continent. Already in 2001, as a host of COP7 in Marrakesh, Morocco developed a range of innovative approaches to mitigation. Morocco has one of the largest portfolio of CDM projects in Africa and is pioneering large-scale financing for renewable energy projects that will transform the Moroccan energy sector. As a host of COP22 in 2016, Morocco was one of the very few countries that enhanced its mitigation ambition from the level communicated in its NDC. Our NDC commits to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 42% below business as usual levels by 2030 if we receive sufficient international support. Our target of 52% of installed electricity production capacity from renewable sources by 2030 ranks among the world's most ambitious ones. Both targets represent an increase of ambition by a full 10 percentage points compared to the INDC. So my presentation will contain two parts. The first part is a summary of the BOR and the recent development, and the second part of experience and lessons learned in participation in the ICA process. Concerning the national context, Morocco is a North African country. It has an important facet on the Atlantic Ocean, about a length about 3,000 kilometers, to which is added in the north about 500 kilometers of coast on the Mediterranean Sea. It has a population around 34 million inhabitants, and more than 60% inhabitants is located in the urban zones. Morocco has an economic growth, an average economic growth per year for about 4.3% since 2008. And Morocco also faces through phenomena for climate change phenomena, and has many ecosystems vulnerability, like coastal areas, estuaries, and fauna and flora, and also oases. Morocco also is a water availability, water scarce country confronted with dwindling groundwater reserves and a strong dependence on rain-fed agriculture. Water availability per capita was over 3 times higher in 1960 than is today. And since 1960 to 2005, the temperature increase from 1.8 degrees C and a decline in precipitations from 1 to 30%. Morocco also is the largest energy importer in the region and has ambitious plans for the renewable energy sector, as I said before. So, yeah. Now, about the institutional arrangements. This is the institutional arrangement for the third communication, national communication, and the first BUR. There is the ministry in charge of environment and sustainable development. It is the president of the committee of interministerial committee. Within there is a unit, a UGP unit for the management of projects, for also the third communication and the first bureau. And also there are many groups, working groups, dealing with the greenhouse gases inventory, dealing with the mitigation politics and measures, dealing with the vulnerability and adaptation, and also for the third national communication compilation, and for the first BUR. Concerning the greenhouse gas inventory, Morocco has already prepared and communicated to the UNFCCC 8 inventories. The inventory for the year 1994, and inventory for the year 2000, and also 2004. And for the third and last national communication, the inventory covers the years from 2005, 2006, 2008, 2010, and 2012. The first BUR is based on the results of the inventory of 2012. Now coming to the results of the greenhouse gas inventory for 2012. The net anthropogenic net emissions of greenhouse gas in Morocco are estimated to 100.5 million ton CO2 equivalents, and this corresponds to an emissions per capita of 3.10 ton CO2 equivalent. These emissions correspond to the balance of total greenhouse gas emissions for the different sources, gross emissions, and the absorption of CO2 through the vegetation ecosystems. The contribution of the direct greenhouse gas in that emissions, we can say that the results of the inventory show the dominance of the dioxide of carbon emission, which reached 66.5 million CO2 ton equivalents, and this represents about 66.2% of the net national direct emissions of CO2. These emissions are distributed. This graph, we can see that the energy is the most emitting sector for about 56.5%, and in the second rank the agriculture for about 21.3%. This graph shows the evolution of the greenhouse gas emission ratio per capita, and this ratio has increased from 1.84 ton equivalent CO2 per inhabitant in 1994 to 3.10 ton equivalent CO2 per inhabitant in 2012, in correlation with the socio-economic development experienced by Morocco during this period. And the growth of emissions rates per capita 1994 to 1912 is 2.5 to 2.9%, and this is due to the population growth and improvement of the standard of living. Now we move to the analysis of trends of emissions per sector between the period 1994 and 2012. Energy represents the largest greenhouse emission sector with 56.5% in 2012, and the average annual growth rate of emissions in this sector between 1994 and 2012 is 4.3%. It's even reached 5.1% between 2004 and 2012, reflecting the strong economic growth experienced by the country in the mid-2000s. The most energy subsectors that contributed to this growth were electricity generation, transport, and households, with respective rates of 5.2%, 5.3%, and 4.9%, respectively. The second emitting sector is agriculture. This graph represents the evolution or the development of emissions of greenhouse gases between 2012 and 2030 versus the baseline. And this is the energy module remains the first emitting sector. The average annual growth rate of emissions for this module over this period would be 3% against 2.82% for the overall emissions. As the second emitting sector, the emissions of agriculture module would evolve at an average annual growth rate of 3% over the same period. The share of carbon dioxide in total emissions remains preponderant, with about 70% in 2012, with a trend to increase until 2020, with about 73% in 2019. Then there is a slight decrease by 2030 with 67.8% of total emissions due to the progress penetration of energy efficient technologies in the energy production mix. Now this is the institutional scheme of the national system for the inventory of greenhouse gas emissions. There is a national committee of inventory. Within there is a inventory unit within the ministry in charge of environment. And this inventory unit is composed with in addition to the Ministry of Environment, with the Ministries of Industry, and with agriculture, forests, and energy. The diagnostic Concerning the mitigation actions and effects, the basic investments for the implementation of energy measures was determined for about 50 billion US dollars, and the this mitigation potential is for about 50 million ton CO2 equivalent per year. And the basic investment for the implementation of non-energy measures is about $5 billion, and the mitigation potential corresponding is about 20 million ton CO2 equivalent per year. This for total is 55 billion US dollars, and the potential is about 71 million ton CO2 equivalent. And these mitigation measures versus the baseline. By taking the baseline emissions according to the baseline scenario, the different proposed measures mitigate greenhouse gas emissions by 54,000 and about 55,000 gigagram equivalent CO2 emissions in 2030, which represents about 33.2% of the emission from the baseline of the same year. The mitigation measures and policies, there is contributions of NAMAs to the mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions. There are 5 NAMAs developed by Morocco. It concerns NAMA of building or housing, NAMA of agriculture, NAMA for household waste, and NAMA for solar pumping, and NAMA for solar roofs, photovoltaic in the buildings. And there is also CDM portfolio. Morocco has an important CDM portfolio, and also there are regulatory measures, especially in building sector and renewable energy sector. These measures contribute to mitigation emissions. Now about the needs and gaps concerning the capacity building related to human, regulatory, and institutional. There are 6 cross-cutting modes of intervention. There's strengthening the legal and institutional framework, improvement of the expertise and the observation, the regional variation of the policies of combating global warming, and prevention and reduction of climate risks. And the 5th, awareness raising, empowerment of actors and capacity building. And last, promoting research, innovation, and transfer of technologies. Concerning the capacity building needs and gaps related to financing and monitoring and assessments, 5 interventions considered: the institutional and financial engineering, and the technical assistance, and the capacity building and monitoring and assessment. To sum the needs and gaps in capacity building for a global action plan, the action plan for implementation of capacity building measures related to different aspects. There is a global global needs for about 111 million of US dollars, and approximately 89% of needs related to technical assistance. Concerning the MRV, Morocco has established 5 NAMAs, and within these NAMAs, in each NAMA there is a proposed MRV system. The MRV system proposed For example, in NAMA waste is stated as follows for MRV for greenhouse gas emissions, MRV for sustainable development co-benefits, and MRV for greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a process ongoing for other NAMAs in the same time. And there is Morocco is now undertaking work to establish and to develop a national MRV system. Concerning the experience and lessons learned in participating in the ICA process, Morocco submitted its first BUR on 7 May 2016 in conjunction with its third national communication. The technical analysis of the BUR took place from 19 to 23 September 2016. From the examination, technical examination, we can raise two main axes. The first concerning the domestic coordination, or it's related to domestic coordination. The development of the first considered with the preparation of the third national communication, and therefore constitutes a summary of the third national communication. So it was the basis for the preparation of Morocco's NDC, and also the development of the third national communication and the first BUR process has raised the level of coordination among the various partners. And on the other hand, the value added of the technical assistance of BURs by the technical team of experts, the technical assistance of the BUR1 of Morocco pointed out some gaps related and emphasized some details to be presented to ensure more transparency, and also respects data tables as indicated in the UNFCCC reporting guidelines of BURs, and also the quality of BUR2 will thus be considerably improved. I will end by this things. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. Now the floor is open for questions again. Thank you. Brazil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Morocco, for the clear presentation. Morocco is a regional leader in terms of CDM projects. So I wanted to know if you could share with us this successful experience, particularly in terms of lesson learned. Thank you.
Mexico, please.
Mexico would like to thank for this very good presentation, very comprehensive. We were very interested in your mention of the NAMA for waste, and in particularly the MRV for sustainable development co-benefits from this NAMA. I was wondering if you can share your experience with us on how difficult or how was your experience with developing this MRV? Thank you.
In Sweden.
Thank you, and thank you, Morocco, for an interesting presentation from which I learned a lot. A question relating to the capacity building needs, which you addressed in the BUR as well as in the presentation. I was wondering if the country has identified priority needs that could be addressed in the short term to be implemented in time, perhaps for the next submission, for the submission of the next BUR. Thank you.
Thank you, Sweden. Now, Morocco, you have the floor for your answers. Thank you.
Thank you for questions. We start by the short-term priorities for capacity buildings. There was some few comments from the technical experts team regarding the gaps of information tied to reporting. So this is one of the axis for the short-term capacity building. So to strengthen reporting, the capacity of reporting and the capacity of collecting data also, and also to enhance collecting data for some types of gases, like the anthropogenic gases, like HFCs, SFCs, SF6, and also the second point is also the capacity building related to climate finance, and especially for the regions, the local communities. There was also the first question about the waste NAMA. As I mentioned, the 5 NAMAs established by Morocco includes MRV systems, and there's are propositions of MRV, and we didn't experience until now the MRV systems proposed, because the NAMAs are not financed yet, except the NAMA agriculture, which has financial support from GCF. For the question related to the CDM projects, Morocco was approximately the first country from Africa who registered CDM projects, and the benefits or the lessons shared from CDM mechanism is the institutional framework or arrangements, and also the projects developed by the partners, and especially public administrations. For about 64% of projects were from the public administrations. I don't know if I cover all the questions. Okay.
Thank you, Morocco. Actually, you will have another round of questions. So Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Morocco, for your interesting presentation. Switzerland will have the following question. Could the reporting and review process could be improved to positively impact on the perception of opportunities and benefits of participating in climate mitigation related activities? Thank you.
EU, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And congratulations for your first BUR to Morocco. Thank you also so much for your thorough presentation today. We noticed that you have mostly used Tier 1 methodologies for estimating greenhouse gas emissions in the inventory. What are the gaps and remaining challenges to move into higher tier methodologies for key emission sources? And also maybe you can elaborate on your key priorities for inventory improvements. Thank you.
Now, China, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Morocco, for the very comprehensive presentation. I noticed that I found that in the measures and the policy part of your presentation, I noticed the household waste and the solar roof PV are really connected with the consumers. Can you share more information on the good practice on the implementation of these measures that our Morocco government take? Thank you.
So, Morocco, you have the floor for your answers.
I'll start by the last question, China, regarding the photovoltaic electricity production. Morocco, I think Morocco has an ambitious strategy for renewable energy, and it was primary importance to set a regulatory framework to have progress in this field. So for there is a regulatory framework that allows production units separate units productions from the medium size plants to produce energy from the renewable energies and to share this energy to the network, national network of electricity. For the question from Switzerland, I think it was about the procedures and how to enhance procedures. So I think the exercise of technical assessments of BOR was very, very important, and to get a direct contact with the technical experts is is very useful, and I don't see any way to enhance something to enhance this matter. For the question of the EU, I don't understand what's about the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was about the use of tier 1 methods to estimate emissions, like default emission factors and so on. You have any, for the estimation of emissions, do you have country-specific emission factors, or do you have any gaps or any improvements that you can think of prioritizing to move to a better estimation of emissions? Thank you.
In Morocco, we have only one emission factor regarding the production of electricity, and we are using IPCC guidelines to estimate the emissions, but we base on methodology that gives the nature of activities concerned, and also an advanced analysis of all programs, politics, strategies of development, socioeconomic development, and to focalize on factors, pertinent or relevant factors who generate greenhouse gas emissions. And then we get an approach adopted to determine the parameters, the required parameters by the assessment models of greenhouse gases.
So, thank you, Morocco, for your presentation and also the information you shared with us. Now, let's move on to Republic of Moldova. I would like to invite the representatives from Republic of Moldova, Mr. Marius Taranu, National GHG Inventory Team Leader, and Ion Commandant, Mitigation and MRV Team Leader, both in the Climate Change Office of the Ministry of Environment, to deliver their presentations. Moldova, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I have the honor, together with my colleague, to present the outcomes of the first biennial update report of the Republic of Moldova, which has been submitted together with two technical annexes, National Inventory Report and the Summary Report on GNG Inventory System. The presentation outline is the same as for other parties, so I will not stop with some details on it and not commenting it. So part one of my presentation, it's focused on summary of biennial update report and recent developments. So I will start with national context. The Republic of Moldova regained its independence in August 1991 after the breakdown of the former Soviet Union. We are a very small country, Eastern European country, located between Romania and Ukraine, with a population around 4 million inhabitants. As per GDP per capita, we are a low middle income country. The contribution to the global GNG emissions, it's less than 0.04% at the level of 2013 year. Also, Moldova is a very vulnerable country, specifically to climate change and extreme meteorological events. As per national context, the convention has been signed in 1992, the parliament ratifying it in 1995. Kyoto Protocol has been ratified by the parliament in February 2003. we associated itself with Copenhagen Accord in January 2010. The Paris Agreement has been signed in 2016 in September, and the Parliament ratified already it quite recently in May, 4th of May 2017. So by this moment, we have submitted 3 national communications and a biennial update report. We are the second only non-Annex 1 party in the world who submitted a national inventory report in conjunction with the national communication. And we did it for the first time in 2010. Right now, we are in the process of finalizing our 4th national communication, and we have started already the development of our second biennial update report. As per institutional arrangements, Ministry of Environment of Republic of Moldova is in charge with the implementation of the convention at the national level. So in 2004, it has been created a climate change office. It's a structure created within the Ministry of Environment, and the role of Climate Change Office, it's also specified by the governmental decision number 141 as of February 2014, specifying the specific role of Climate Change Office. So since it has been set up, and until this moment, the respective body is responsible for preparation of GNG inventories, national communications, as well as of biennial update reports of the Republic of Moldova. In this slide, we presented very schematically how the institutional arrangements works. Within the Climate Change Office, there are 3 working groups, and also the activity of Climate Change Office is supervising by a steering committee. The chair is the Minister of Environment, and 7 relevant ministries are represented as members of this steering committee. And also a long range of institutions are involved as data providers, and we are very grateful for receiving very qualitative information and activity data, which is used to enhance our reporting under the convention. As per GNG inventory profile, so between 1990 to 2013, the GNG emissions decreased in the Republic of Moldova with around 70%. It's quite unusual for a non-Annex 1 party. So the emissions decreased from around 43 to around 13 megatons of CO2 equivalent. In this slide, you can see how the trends of GNG inventories, GNG emissions were between 1990 and 2013 in the Republic of Moldova and Annex 1 parties. So you can see the same pattern. It's very common to Eastern European and Central European Annex 1 parties. So for breakdown of GNGs by gases, you can see from this slide that CO2 has the biggest share in the structure of national GNG emissions, followed by methane and N2O. In the recent years, specifically since 1995 to the latest year, the share of F-gases is on permanent increase. However, their share in the total structure of GNG emissions, it's quite smaller. It's around 1.2%. So the GNG emissions trends by sector, it's represented in this slide. You can see how the emissions evolved during this period of time. The biggest reductions being noted for energy and agriculture sector. Energy, agriculture and waste sectors are the most relevant sectors, so they have the biggest share in the structure of national GNG inventory. So the trends and associated variables. In order to have a better understanding why this situation is happening in the Republic of Moldova, I have put into this slide some additional information on some associated variables. So for instance, consumption of primary energy resources decreased since 1990 with 78%, electricity consumption with 52%, heat consumption with 82%, and real GDP, it's quite strange as well for a non-Annex 1 party from Eastern Europe, but we still have a decrease of 32% since 1990 to 2013. GNG intensity decreased by 56%, and the population number as well decreased by around 7%. Concomitantly, since 2000 to 2013, the real GDP increased by around 90%. So this indicates that economy is developing in correct direction. However, by 2013, its level reached just 68% of the 1990 year level. Further, in this slide, we are presenting that this increase in the variables, it's noted also for other relevant variables. For instance, electricity consumption increased with around 21%, heat consumption by 10%, consumption of primary energy resources increased in the latest years with around 17%, and GNG intensity decreased by 37%, while the GNG emissions increased by around 19.6%. So this shows that the first signs of decoupling the economic growth from the growth of GNG emissions. Very positive sign for my country. And now I will pass the floor to my colleague, Mr. Commandant.
The Republic of Moldova reported in this BUR information on mitigation actions and their effects. The mitigation actions have been structured by sectors, and each of sectors have specific measures. I will mention some of them only. The main one, in energy sector, energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, industrial process, decreases the amount of clinker in the cement production, in agriculture, conservative agriculture, and improving the structure of livestock and poultry. In forestry, gradual increase of the forest lands, and in waste sector, development of new regional waste landfill and waste transfer stations. 11 complex mitigation programs have been reported in tabular format. Here presented them. I will mention only some of them. Production of electricity and heat from renewable energy sources, heat production from biomass, enhancing energy efficiency, biofuels use in transport sector, improving structure of livestock and poultry, conservative agriculture, extension of forested areas, improved solid waste management with biogas recovery. All of this program contains numbers, and they need, in order to be implemented, to be developed properly. So in the frame of the low emission capacity building program launched in 2014 up to 2016, specific numbers have been selected and prioritized. In this respect, the experience, we gained experience in technology need assessment project, and knowledge transfer obtained during this project permit us to select from long list of measures of 136 to 4 numbers for detailed examination. At the last stage, stakeholders participated in criteria scoring. Here are presented all these 4 numbers developed in a detailed manner. Waste to energy number, promotion of small CHP, promoting energy efficiency, lighting, afforestation of degraded land. All these numbers require around 350 million euro investments, and they cover up to 20% of conditional INDC. Here you can see the results of implementation of mitigation measures. During the years 2006-2013, the energy intensity decreased by 4% per year, and on the right figure, you can see a sharp development of renewable sources in the country. As to CDM project, there are 11 of them, from which 8 were registered by CDM Executive Board. What are the emission targets? The Republic of Moldova intends to achieve an economy-wide unconditional target of reducing by 2030 its GNG emissions by 67% below its 1990 level, and conditional target is 78%. Here are shown the GNG gases evolution during the year 1990 up to 2030. What are the progress? The government and parliament approved the law of emission development strategy up to 2030, published in March of this year. The law on ratification of Paris Agreement, as Marius already said, law on promoting the use of energy from renewable sources, published in 2016, National Action Plan on Energy Efficiency, 2 of them, the last is in process of implementation. Other 8 NAMAs project design document are under the development in 2017. Subject of approval are regulation on measures to reduce emissions from air conditioning systems in motor vehicles and taxes for halocarbons. Domestic MRV. The national MRV system currently under the development will be focused on 3 MRV categories. GNG emissions, unilateral NAMAs projects and mitigation actions, supported NAMAs projects. All NAMAs categories will be monitored using specific templates. By 2018, the following legislative acts are expected to be approved. Government decision on establishing an operation of the national system for monitoring and reporting GNG emissions and other information relevant to climate change. Government decision on establishing a mechanism for coordinating activities in the climate change area. Then the new Environment Protection Agency to be established by 2020 is Plan B, responsible further for the national MRV system implementation. Obstacles and barriers. All of them are obstructed by sectors. I will mention some of them only. Consumers reduce payment capacity. Second-hand vehicle used. Many energy efficiency projects in building are too small to attract investors. Legislative instability in fiscal and budgetary policy. Small budgetary allocation for agriculture. Excessive fragmentation of agricultural lands. Inadequate forest management, insufficient size of the surfaces covered with forests. And in waste sector, insufficient financing of the waste management sector. What is the support received and needed? Up to June 1st, 2015, the donor commitments to the Republic of Moldova accounted for about 4.3 billion euro. With total disbursement of 2.4 billion euro for a total of around 1,700 projects. What the financing is needed? For implementation of scenario with measures, we need 3.7 billion for the following 15 years and around 4.9 billion for scenario with additional measures.
So I will continue with part 2 of our presentation, which is focused on experience and lesson learned in participation in the ICA process. So participation in this process raised the profile of climate change actions at the domestic level. It's for sure. How it's take place and some more information about this. So we started our biennial update report on 17th of July 2014, and usually it's a 2-year cycle. In our case, we submitted our biennial update report by 5th of April 2016. So the technical analysis took place in September 2016, and the report has been published already on 12th of February 2017. We have been very cooperative with the technical team of experts and the secretariat team. Also, the first INDC, or our INDC, has been submitted in September 2015, and as you can see, we have been benefited a lot from this process because our targets, mitigation targets, has been fixed with the support of mitigation and MRV team of experts. Also, the low-emission development strategy of the Republic of Moldova until 2030 has been approved already by the government at the end of December 2016, representing, in fact, the mechanism for achieving the assumed mitigation targets, which are noted or are included in our INDC. And the Paris Agreement has been ratified by the Parliament on May 2017. And our office and the Ministry of Environment has been provided with full support and argumentation in the Parliament commissions and in all governmental bodies. And for sure, we benefited a lot from this larger framework of ICA process in the Republic of Moldova. So how the biennial update report has been prepared and how we acted with the team of technical experts. So from this slide, you can see that the head of climate change office acted as the overall coordinator of the process and as a focal point for ICA process as well. He or the head of climate change office has been provided with some high-level support in case it's deemed necessary by the UNFCCC focal point, and in fact, two teams of experts has been activated, and 2 coordinators has been assigned to prepare the main chapters of the biennial update report. And as I informed previously, since 2010, the Republic of Moldova is preparing as well a national inventory report, which is a technical annex of biennial update report. Also, we have benefited a lot from the technical point of view from experienced reviewers. Our party has in the UNFCCC roster of experts, and also national consultants and partner institutions provided as well a very important, relevant technical support when it was deemed necessary. So, as for preparing the ICA process, so while providing climate-related information for biennial update report preparation, the following processes happened in my country. So during this process, we tried to optimize the procedures for gathering and processing information necessary to compile, to develop the GNG inventories, biennial update reports, and national communications. Considering that this process, it should be a continuous improvement process, and it's needed for ensuring timeliness, specifically timeliness, and high quality of the reporting, specifically after, in the recent years, each non-Annex party has to report, in fact, on biennial basis. So it's quite difficult and challenging for most of the parties. In our case, indeed, it was quite challenging, but we succeeded to do it even in less time as it was initially assigned while discussing this with our GF implementation agency, with UN Environment. So also we have succeeded to prepare 2 governmental decisions. The first one, it's on establishing an operation of the national system for monitoring and reporting GNG emissions and other information relevant to climate change. In fact, we successfully transposed the Regulation 525 of the European Union, accepting or adapting it to the national circumstances of the Republic of Moldova, keeping in mind that we are a non-Annex party at this moment, although we are in the process with discussing with the European Union as a candidate member country, but it's a little bit more time to think on this. But anyway, we have decided at this moment already to start be prepared for more challenging timeliness of reporting. Also, a second governmental decision is on establishing the mechanism for coordinating activities in the climate change area. It's not only on mitigation, but this governmental decision is covering also the adaptation component as well. Also, as a result, we expect to enhance considerably the national arrangements with more clear defining the roles, responsibilities, and deadlines, and domestic coordination of climate change-related activities. So, as for additional value of our cooperation with a technical team of experts, so within the process, we ensured for us, or the process itself ensured for us the opportunity to enhance the reporting as well as to better prioritize the country needs. The process also has been used to highlight the needs for national authorities in charge with various aspects related to climate change at national and local level. It provided also the opportunity to highlight to the decision makers the relevance of enhancing arrangements needed for ensuring a timely, transparent and complete reporting, for establishing an effective instrument to monitor the undertaking actions and assess the progress related to compliance with the adopted mitigation targets. Also, the process highlighted the importance of the institutional memory and that of maintaining the key technical expertise in the national institution involved in the reporting process. With this, I would like to thank you for attention, and we are welcome to raise any question. We'll be very glad to respond to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Moldova. So I open the floor for questions. Switzerland, please. I'm very sorry, I have some problems seeing these flags here in New Zealand.
Thank you. And thank you to Moldova for that excellent presentation. First of all, we would really like to congratulate you on the publication of your first biennial update report, and in particular for its very high quality. We note that the technical team of experts concluded that all of the elements of the modalities and guidelines were included in the BUR. Also, thank you for the answer that you provided to our written question prior to the start of this session. We have a further question relating to the use of IPCC guidelines in your BUR. Are you able to tell us, is Moldova anticipating moving fully towards the 2006 IPCC guidelines for future BURs? And if so, is there anything you can tell us about how you might be preparing to do so? Thank you.
Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Moldova also for the very comprehensive presentation and outlining the developments already going on in terms of institutional arrangements and improvements that you are undertaking. In the meantime, I would have two questions in terms of priorities for the future, and one is related to the capacity building needs. You said also that the technical analysis has helped to raise the profile, but also to bring to the attention of other authorities in the country the priorities in reporting. And so my question will be, to what extent you think that the priorities for capacity building identified as part of the BUR technical analysis were mirroring your own national priorities, and also whether you think which of them could be addressed in the short term, like for the next BUR. And related to this is my second questions related to the greenhouse gas inventory, maybe also as a follow-up to the questions by the previous speaker, to what extent, so what is your highest priority related to improving the greenhouse gas inventory for the next BUR? Thank you.
And Mexico, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mexico would like to congratulate Moldova for its BUR and also for this excellent and very comprehensive presentation. We've learned a lot about your efforts today and during the process. I would like to ask a question regarding your mention of the TNA process. And it will be interesting for us to learn more and hear your experience and lessons learned on how this process of technology needs assessment has helped you prioritize your NAMAs. Thank you very much.
Moldova, the floor is yours to respond to these questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I will start with the first question raised by New Zealand on use of IPCC guidelines. So I have to share with you that we are benefiting from very experienced reviewers under the UNFCCC process. Our team of experts, of GNG inventory experts, is very qualified. And we involved in the process since 2001, as I am not mistaken. Katya can confirm it. So we are trying to do our best to improve the quality of our GNG inventory on permanent basis. So when the IPC 2006 IPC guidelines has been published, immediately we have started already to think how to do it, how to use it in order to improve the quality of our GNG inventory. So already you can see from our biennial update report that, for instance, the inventory for energy sector, it's completely done with the use with the use of 2006 IPC guidelines. The same it's with agriculture sector. In IPC, in industrial processes, we used in the extent possible, but not for not for all categories. While for waste, we used the good practice guidelines. IPC good practice guidelines. And for LULUCF sector, we used also the good practice guidelines for LULUCF sector published in 2003. So for the second biennial update report cycle, we already used in full extent the 2006 IPC guidelines. Already, and this fourth national communication, the inventory, which will be part of our fourth national communication, to be published by the end of this year, it's already undertaking completely in accordance with the 2006 IPC guidelines. So we are quite advanced on this level. So on the question how we intend to move to 2006 IPC guidelines, so we already did it. In fact, we have already the results in accordance with these new guidelines. With regarding the second question of Germany, regarding the priorities for the future. So I will start with our priorities in the area of GNG inventory, and my colleague will also explain or provide some details about the mitigation and the MRV component. So our priorities for the future, first of all, it's to improve the reporting and timeliness. For us, it's very important because I informed already the audience previously that we transposed the regulation 525 of European Union, and there are quite tight deadlines for reporting. We are aware that for a non-Annex party, it's quite challenging. So in order to be able to report on time, we have to put in place an institutional system which will work perfectly. So our best or our high priority is to approve the respective two governmental decisions which have been provided for the government for approval and consideration. We intend, first of all, to discuss with all governmental bodies and argued for them the necessary of approving the respective governmental decision in order to be able to have a system in place which will work perfectly in accordance with the new deadlines and in accordance with the new requirements, very tight requirements for timeliness reporting. Also, we are working on improving the transparency of reporting, trying to collect and improve the statistical system. Unfortunately, we have an old statistical system, which it's from former Soviet Union times, and at this moment we are trying to cooperate with all European countries which are providing to us very relevant support. For instance, Sweden, Norway as well are providing very considerable support to the National Bureau of Statistics, trying to improve the indicators which will be collected and used by a GNG inventory team in order to be able to have a better reporting system. Also, we are trying to cooperate in other aspects. For instance, we are trying to cooperate with UNEC, United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, because also they are trying to improve the statistical system, trying to cover as much as statistical indicators in this area. So in order to have a better cooperation, we have to think how the system should work. And it's the highest priority of us in this area. So as per our experience in cooperating with TTE and on identifying the capacity building needs. So also, it's very important. I have to commend the Secretariat for inviting us, for keeping us in mind and inviting national experts to participate in this process. Participating in ICA process per whole, not only in the case as a host country, but also as expert, it's very beneficial. And I will advise every non-Annex I party trying to involve as much expert as possible in this process, because we are benefiting a lot from this process, trying and learning how to be better prepared for higher reporting requirements. So I have to share that the quality, as you can see from the technical review report, the quality of our biennial update report is very high. And in fact, all mandatory issues are in place. So capacity building needs has been identified and has been prioritized with the help of TTE. But we are quite well aware about the relevance of them and about the priority of them. And we just try to better prioritize which are of high priority and which are of low priority. But anyway, all of them should be implemented later or in the time. So the capacity building, it's very relevant for us, and we are very grateful for this process and for the opportunity to share with you the experience participating in this process. Thank you.
As to capacity buildings, what are the priority for the country? As I said, the country rely on NAMAs in order to reach mitigation targets. As it is known, NAMAs look like a business plan, which reflect, in fact, all the aspects needed to implement a measure. And we, in frame of low emission capacity building project, have received appropriate consulting from the international experts, and which permitted to develop in full manner for NAMAs, but they do not cover all the sectors. That's why we would appreciate to have assistance to develop the same NAMAs for other sectors and which are not covered. This is building, industry, and agriculture. In the same time, as to what are the capacity, what are other needs in capacity building are to carry out climate studies, research and assessments, formulate climate strategies and policies, implement climate strategies and policies, as I said, negotiate climate issues internationally, primarily to attract financing. But if would speak about what are the priorities, as I said, first we would like to have this assistance to develop NAMAs for other sectors. They could serve as template for development of other measures in the appropriate sectors. What more related to capacity building, training stakeholders in implementing NAMAs elaborated, including MRV per NAMA, formulate and implement the climate strategies and policies, as already said, strengthening policies, the legal framework as a management of forestry sector, enhancing the national capacity to prepare viable project proposals, attracting financing, such as developing project design document for NAMA in transport, industry and agriculture sector, enhances the capacity of the national network of research institutions, as I already said. So as to question of Mexico, 10-year experience. In fact, the experience, this project lasts for 3 years and help us very much to identify the priority sectors, first of all, and then from each of these priority sectors to identify the measures that merit to be analyzed and prioritized. What was important in frame of this project we were taught how to use multi-criteria decision analysis. And when we start to the second project, low emission capacity building project, we, as I said, selected 136 projects, most of them from technology need assessment project. And as a final stage, we understood that without applying multi-criteria decision analysis, the approach would be too subjective, and that's why this instrument helped us very much to identify the best numbers for detailed examination. Thank you.
So thank you, Moldova, for your presentation also, and also for the information you provided to the audience. Thank you. Now, colleagues, let's move on to Thailand. I would like to invite the representative from Republic of Thailand, Dr. Pirun Saitsupanich, Director of Climate Change Management and Coordination Division, to deliver his presentation. Thank you. The floor. Thailand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, my dear colleagues. It's my privilege to be here to present to you Thailand first BUR. Thailand has submitted our first BUR in December 2015. The greenhouse gas emission calculation is based on revised 1996 IPCC guideline, good practice guidance, and some emission factors were obtained from 2006 IPCC guideline. So I'm going to give the outline. Looking at the national circumstances, Thailand is located at the heart of the mainland Southeast Asia. The land area is approximately 514,000 square kilometers, comprising of hills, mountains, plains, especially the 2,615 kilometers of coastline along the Gulf of Thailand and the Andaman Sea. Land use is classified as 32% forest, 46% agriculture, of which 47% is dedicated to rice cultivation. Our population is reaching 66 million people with the gender ratio of 0.96 male to female. The majority of the population is living in the rural areas, 55.8%, but the percentage is being decreased because people are tending to move to reside in the municipal area more and more. In 2015, World Bank has classified us as the upper middle income economies, and our transportation is still 87.5% road-based. Natural gas consumption is around 46%, which is contributing to energy production and also the transportation fuels. Let's take a look at the institutional arrangement for the greenhouse gas inventory, because the Thai government has put climate change as one of the national priorities. So we have been able to establish the permanent structure of institutions to work on the greenhouse gas inventory. We have designated 5 leading agencies to collect activity data from 59 line agencies with the technical supports from Thailand greenhouse gas management organizations on the quality control. Office of Natural Resources and Environmental Policy and Planning under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment as a national focal point. We compile activity data, recheck them, and do the preliminary calculation of the greenhouse gas emissions before we submit the result to the greenhouse gas emission inventory working groups for review and revision if needed. And then we have set up the Technical and Greenhouse Gas Database Subcommittee, which is chaired by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Natural Resource and Environment for the quality assurance. And then final approval will be done by the National Committee on Climate Change Policy, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. And they are comprising of 15 permanent secretaries from different ministries and 5 national experts. Here, even though the first BUR and the coming second BUR, Thailand is still using 1996 IPCC guidelines, but we are taking a big step to move to 2006 IPCC guideline with the great support from the Australian government in the development of the Thailand Greenhouse Gas Emission Inventory System, or TGIS, which is, I can say it's twin of the ages, but we tailor the system to fit with our national activity data collection system and to fit with our institutional arrangements. Here to you, just some key features with TGIS. It will be able to perform the carbon check for the energy sector, to produce different formats reports according to the UNFCCC requirement. It can calculate the time series of emissions, and also the equation on the uncertainty calculation is embedded into the system. Oops. Okay, here is the total greenhouse gas emissions, excluding LULUCF. In 2011, Thailand emitted around 305 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, of which energy sector contributes the most emissions of around to 73%, followed by agriculture around 17%, industrial process of 6%, and the last, which is waste, around 4%. LULUCF is still considered as the removal sector of around 70 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. The trend of greenhouse gas emissions from the period of 2000 to 2006, it was steadily increasing. But when we take a look at the emission trend from 2006 to 2011, it's become more sort of stable. Looking at the growth rate of the emission on the energy and industry sectors throughout these periods were around 3.3% and 2.7% respectively, compared to the real GDP of growth rate of 4.1% during the same time period. For the mitigation action aspects, Thailand has integrated climate change into our 20-year national strategies. We have also put our NAMA emission reduction target into our national social and economic development plan, the 5-year terms. We also formulated the National Climate Change Master Plan, which is approved by the Cabinet in July 2015, and now the plan is being implemented with the great support from BMUB and GIZ to integrate the climate change into the provincial and local development plans. The mitigation target by 2020, we aim to reduce 7 to 20% compared to the business as usual scenario in 2020, and to increase the share of the renewable energy consumption by 25%. And in 2030, we aim to reduce 25% energy intensity from the base year of 2005. And at the same year, the Ministry of Energy has revised their alternative energy development and the energy efficiency plans. And the target under these plans are 30% renewable energy share on the final energy consumptions in 2036, and to reduce 30% energy intensity from base year of 2010. And of course, these plans are a solid basis for Thailand NDC emission reduction target development of 20% in 2030 compared to the BAU. Here is the tracking of the NAMA pledge, 7% in 2020. We have established the MRV frameworks, and we come up with the 5 mitigation measures, which are electricity generation from renewable energy sources, ethanol production, biodiesel production, and the improving efficiency of specific energy consumptions on existing power plants. After we tracked the result, it showed in 2013 we were able to reduce 4% or around 14.34 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent compared to the BAU. Here is the Thailand's MRV system that we officially established. On the ministerial level, there is the technical sub-working group at the to determine an evaluation criteria for the greenhouse gas emission reduction, namely MRV process and structure, appropriate methodology, which is developed based on the CDM methodology, but has been adjusted to fit with our requirement and criteria. And then the result will be sent to the Climate Change Coordination Working Group under the ministerial level for preliminary approval before it's sent to the NAMAR and MRV Sub-National Committee, which is chaired by the Permanent Secretary for endorsement for the verification of the greenhouse gas emission reduction. And the final justify will be on the National Committee on Climate Change Policy, which is chaired by the Prime Minister, before we can include our emission reduction into our BUR. The obstacles and barriers we have experienced during the working on our BUR preparation and greenhouse gas calculations is no mandate is provided by climate change law, because in Thailand, under current circumstances, we don't have a climate change act yet. We utilize our power through the soft law like cabinet resolution or royal decree issued by the Office of Prime Minister. So in order to provide mandate for LIE agency to collect activity data from, for example, private sectors, still, difficult. And we don't have yet in place the data management system for archiving our data for inventory calculation, even though we are working on this for the teachers with the Australian government. And the difficulty in transition of estimating the greenhouse gas inventory, because the lack of the research support to move up from tier 1 to tier 2s. Here are some of the support needs on the energy supply. We think that smart grid is very crucial to enhance the renewable energy production and consumption. The advanced technology in waste to energy is very substantially important for Thailand right now, because we trying to move forward in this sector. And advanced biofuels production from non-food feedstock is one of the key technologies we would like to see. And also on the agricultural sector, we would like to increase our capability in forecasting and early warning system setting up in order to reduce the risk from climate change impacts. The management, high efficiency management of infrastructure to efficiently manage water resource is one of the area that we would like to have more capacity, and also the technology transfer. Modeling on the prediction of the climate weathers, it's some of the keys have been raised by the country expert. Here just to show you the support received so far in the BUR1 in 2011. We have received support from JEF, EU, BMUB through the International Climate Initiative, and of course from the government of Australia to help us to build the teachers to step up from 1996 to the 2006 IPCC guidelines. The ratio of the adaptation budgets to the mitigation budgets is around 68% to 32%. through the participation in the ICA process, of course, this process has raised awareness of our decision maker on the transparency issues of what to be reported in the BUR. So we have established the national structure of reporting system that engage LI agencies to support the activity data. And of course, comments receiving from TTE has identified gaps of the data to be input into the BUR, which lead to the need for the improvement of our institutional arrangement for the activity data collection. And also the comments also lead to the capacity building need for our national experts to prepare necessary data to be in our next BUR for increasing of the transparency and clarity. Oops. Okay. So not respond to the questions because I still have time left. So I'll go quickly to the questions received from the USA. LULUCF Sing growing between 2004 and 2005 because we have added rubber plantations to our greenhouse gas emission estimation under subcategory changes in forest and woody biomass stocks. But before that, we don't have the data, so we don't calculate them. From Switzerland, the absence, the unavailability of the fuel consumption data for the international aviation and water transport in 2012 and 2013. This is because during the time period, the organization responsible for reporting these data were under the restructuring, so the data are missing. But we were able to calculate the greenhouse gas emissions for this sectors by using the energy data in the excuse me, the energy situation 2013 provided by the Ministry of Energy. So from New Zealand, the uncertainty assessment in the next BUR, of course, Thailand is going to put the uncertainty assessment into our second BUR, which is supposed to be submitted at the end of this year. But of course, we still need support on these issues for us to be able to calculate the uncertainty, to reduce the level of uncertainty in the LULUCF and agriculture sectors. And also the uncertainty calculation will be embedded into the TGS, as I have mentioned before. From EU, the assumption and methodologies used for the LULUCF sector, the methodologies that we used is based on revised 1996 IPCC guidelines and decision 3 in the 2003 good practice guidance for LULUCF for a subcategory 5A, 5B, 5C, and the tier 2 emission factors were obtained from the published data and expert judgments. But in the end, the activity data and the emission factor were verified by the LULUCF greenhouse gas inventory working group established under the National Committee on Climate Change Policy. From the EU, again, the information of the application of tier 2 methodologies for LULUCF sector. The forest area used in the calculations was from remote sensing data reported by the Royal Forestry Department. The area of planted forests were reported by responsible organizations, for example, the Office of Agricultural Economics and the Forestry Industrial Organization. For the improve of the estimates in the LULUCF sector for the upcoming GHG inventory. Of course, more research work has been carried out in the countries these days, especially on the above ground biomass and carbon contents of natural forests and plantations. So we are expecting to see more country-specific emission factor. And at the same time, we are in the process of developing the activity data template, which we standardized to collect activity data according to the IPCC 2006 guidelines. And hopefully it will be done at the end of this year. From the EU again, the experience on using the IPCC 2006 guidelines. Of course, we have less experience on the 2006 IPCC guideline, but with the great support from the Austrian government on the TGIS, we will be able to, we are expecting to be using the 2006 IPCC guideline for our third BUR, if on the assumption that our activity data collection system also has completely established and our agency has capability to collect such data. This is from EU priority needs in the short term. Of course, we would like to improve our reporting emissions on marine and aviation bunkers because we would like to reduce the gap that we found when we calculate the calculate emissions using the reference approach compared to the sectoral approach. And we would like to improve our data collection system to shift from 1996 to 2006 IPCC guidelines, and the enhancement of the national capacity to develop assumptions for all mitigation actions crucial, because this will be beneficial for us for the more ambitious NDC targets in the future. From the EU, key success factors for data collection and the greenhouse gas inventory improvement. The most important key success factor is the support from the policymakers. It's the, our Prime Minister has emphasized about climate change, and as I said, has put climate change as one of the national priorities. So we, have been able to designate 5 leading agencies to work together closely with the national focal point to collect the activity data. And at the same time, we have also provide capacity building for our LIE agency as well, for them to better understand about climate change and understand about the activity data that needed to be collected to comply with the UNFCCC requirement. EU process to enable higher tier methodologies for key agriculture subsectors. Of course, because Thailand is one of the leading countries for agricultural production, so we have quite a number of research being done by government agencies and universities to come up with country-specific emission factor. And for the national level, so we have been able to calculate emissions in the agricultural sector using the tier 2 for many subsectors. And as I mentioned before, whatever we selected, activity data and emission factor has to be approved by the working group on the greenhouse gas inventory. The EU, last 2 questions. The remaining challenges of moving to higher tier methodologies in agricultural sector. We would like to increase our LIE agency understanding on the manure management systems. So for that, they can collect activity data that is in according to the IPCC guideline, and the limitation of equipment and analytical instruments also on the methane conversion factors or emission factor from each manure management system. And the aiming to higher IPC methodologies, capacity building is required, the technical training of the agricultural modeling, growth model, and denitrification and decomposition model, which is developed by the US. And okay. Last from the EU is the BUR guidelines provide sufficiently clear for us to follow. At that time that we prepare our first BUR, we think that the domestic MRV is not clear of what to be reported under the BUR, including the finance, as well as the finance, technology, and capacity building needs and supports. And one of the aspects is that we see the overlapping of the NC in some topics, such as natural circumstance, inventory, and mitigation. So it's a workload that we have to do the report, the NC and the BUR at the same time. So to avoid the confusion of the national consultation on the inventory and natural circumstances, we have to come up with our strategic approach to avoid such time and money investment on that consultation process of the same information. And of what overall being said, thank you for your attention, and we will be gladly to receive more questions from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Thailand, for your presentation. Now, please let me open the floor for questions. Korea, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for comprehensive presentation. According to the Thailand National Climate Change Master Plan, Thailand mentioned that GHG emissions from energy and transport sectors would be reduced by 7 to 20% in 2020, depending on the level of international support. So what would be the GHG reduction in the energy sector contributed by Thailand effort alone to meet the reduction target in 2020? Second question is, what is the top priority for the international support in the energy sector to reduce the GHG emissions? Thank you.
Thank you. Japan, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Thailand, for your very informative presentation. It was quite helpful to understand your activities. I have a question about your MLV system. Following up the question raised by EU in the written questions process. You need to regularly prepare BUR. We believe that you had to enhance the continuity or sustainability of the MLV system, including GHG inventory or mitigation actions. So you have any particular lesson learned or good practice which contributed to the enhancement of these sustainability or continuity? Could you share with us? Thank you very much.
And the EU, please.
Thank you, Chair. And congratulations to Thailand for the first BUR. It was really a very good presentation, and thank you very much for the written answers as well. You have an impressive delegation also with you here. I think you have explained everything, but I would just like to confirm with you our understanding of your inventory priorities. So in relation to your BUR too, actually, is the move to the 2006 IPCC guidelines supported by the government of Australia, as you explained, moving to higher tier methods, improving activity data collection among your key priorities for greenhouse gas inventories? That's my first question. I have a clarification also asking from your presentation whether you were, I understood maybe, let me put the question. Are you planning to replace gasoline and diesel with ethanol and biodiesel in the transport sector? Thank you.
And let me also give floor to the representative of India for the question. Then we will go for another round. India, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. India congratulates Thailand for crisp and concise presentation of information in BUR1. Your national greenhouse gas inventory suggests that energy sector contributes to over 70% of national emissions, and there are mitigation measures being planned and implemented. Summary of support needs have been indicated in your presentation. However, we would like to understand if any quantification is available in terms of level of support needed. What constraints were faced in quantification of support need? Thank you.
Thank you. So Thailand, I will appreciate your brief answers on these questions. Thank you.
Okay, to respond to the Korean question, under the CCMP, we set target for emission reduction in 2020, 7 to 20%, 7% that will be based on our domestic effort. And from upper, more than 7% to 20% depends on the support received on the financial and technological transfer and capacity building. MRV. Okay, because for the MRV, I think it's the same as the other developing countries where national focal point of the UNFCCC, who is in charge of the greenhouse gas inventory calculations. Actually, it's not the ministry that do the mitigation actions. So what we do, our strategy is we communicate constantly and work collaboratively with our line agency. We form many working groups under the mandate of the National Committee on Climate Change Policy. We work together to identify the MRV potential measures, and we also establish the MRV frameworks together. And before we send the framework to get the approval from the cabinet, we make sure that all ministries agree with this developed framework. For the EU, let me respond to the use of the biofuel and gas oil in the transportation sectors. Yes, of course. We are using them right now, and we are able to track the results. We up to 2011, around it's the well, I couldn't find them right now, but it's around 2 million liters of gas oil and some millions of biodiesel that are being, utilized in the country, and the number continue to grow. And according to the target set under the AEDP and the EEP issued by the Ministry of Energy, we aim to see the final replacement of the fossil fuel with more of the gas oil and the biodiesel. For India, support needs for energy efficiency, of course,
Thank you. So
yes, as the for the energy efficiency that we need, well, let's because we under our NDC emission target reduction target in 2030, energy efficiency in the industrial sectors are one of the priority measures. But still, we are in the process of developing our domestic MRV on this issue, because as known by everyone that energy efficiency is quite difficult on the MRV system. Constraint. And to respond to the EU questions that about the TGIS, that TGIS will also incorporate the calculation of the biofuel and gasoline emission. Yes, and we are in the process of working with the Australian experts. Yeah.
So thank you. Now, China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Thailand, for a comprehensive presentation. You have just mentioned the 2020 and 2030 targets in your presentation. Can you share more information on the challenges Thailand facing in achieving these goals and your consideration to address all these matters? Thank you.
Yes, for the 2020 targets, we have established what we call the NAMA roadmap, where we identify, measures to be done each year until 2020. In 2013, we were able to MRV 4 mitigation reduction measures, but in 2016, we will be able to increase 2 more mitigation reduction measures. And for the 2030 emission reduction target under NDC, we have finalized our NDC roadmap that identify emission reduction targets for 15 potential mitigation measures. And the roadmap is being tabled to the cabinet for approval before the cabinet gives the mandate to LIDE agency to do the action plans according to the emission reduction target allocated. Oh, one more thing, that the emission reduction target in 2020 is based on just energy and transportation sectors, but for the NDC, we extend the sector to cover waste and the IPPU as well, and we are working with other our LIDE agency domestically to identify the baseline for the emission reduction in the agricultural sectors. But of course, that our aim is to increase the production yield and reduce the energy consumption. In other words, it's we're looking into an adaptation co-benefit on this sector.
Thank you, Thailand, also for your answer. But now we will have 2 more parties asking for floor, Brazil and Saudi Arabia. The floor is open for you, Brazil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank the distinguished representative of Thailand for his clear presentation. One of the main targets of Thailand's climate change master plan 2015-2020 is the increase of renewables, such as the use of ethanol. I understand you advanced the European Union, but I wanted you to, if you could share with us the experience of Thailand with the use of ethanol in the transport sector. Thank you.
Now, Saudi Arabia, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's a bit awkward being the last question for the last session, I guess, on this. Just one question to Thailand. You mentioned, I think, one of the challenges that you faced during your biannual reports is the aggregation of the maritime sector. If you could kindly clarify what you meant. Do you want the maritime sector to be part of your NDC or plans or biannual report? Or is it, my understanding is that it's under a different sector like the IMO, International Maritime Organization. Do you want to include it in here? If you could just clarify on that, because I didn't get it. Thank you very much.
Sure. We will not include those emissions into our BUR, but according to the TTE comments, we have to do the reference approach and the sectoral approach, and we found that there's still a gap between these 2 approaches, and we think that we have to come up with the better management of data collection on the international aviation and maritime transport to be able to reduce such gap. Okay, we for the 2030 the target for the biofuel and the ethanol usage is 9 million liters per day, and now we have achieved 3 million liter per day for biodiesel and 3 million liter per day for ethanol utilization.
So thank you, Thailand. And now let's move on to Uruguay for the final presentation of the session. I would like to invite the representatives from Uruguay, Mr. Ignacio Lorenzo, Ms. Mariana Kasparsky, Ms. Paula Visca, and Mr. Walter Oyhanchabal to deliver their presentation. Uruguay, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Rapporteur. We will read a very short introductory statement and then we'll proceed to deliver our presentation on screen. Uruguay welcomed this SBI session on the facilitative sharing of views within the international consultation analysis of the biennial update report. Uruguay is very pleased to participate in this session under the principle of non-intrusive, non-punitive, and in respect of national sovereignty. By participating in this session, we seek to be transparent in our GHG inventory as well as towards our policies and measures that relate to mitigation at a national context. Uruguay believes transparency allows us to better understand each other, to better interact in good faith to share lessons as well as barriers, and to seek for support from developed country parties to developing countries for us to increase our capacity in relation to climate change policies and actions and MRV. Uruguay has just ended drafting their national climate change policy, where we have included very specific provisions in relation to MRV that we are confident will increase transparency as well as efficiency in terms of policy making and delivery. We are proud to attend our first FSB session and also that we have presented our first biannual update report last year. It was indeed a very useful outcome in both global and national levels, and that is a result of great efforts from our country as a whole, with the participation of many ministries and professionals, especially Ministry of Housing, Land Planning and Environment, Ministry of Livestock, Agriculture and Fisheries, and the Ministry of Industry, Energy and Mining. We are very thankful to them for their assistance to the work that we will present. Our presentation will engage on three parts. Part one will be a summary of our BUR and recent developments. Of course, we will have a very brief interaction on our national context, then our GHG inventory, our main mitigation actions and policies, the support needed and received. Later, we will address the issue of lessons learned in the ICA process. And last, we will also engage on the questions that we have received on the platform, that we also have shared answers by email earlier this morning. As for our national context, regarding institutional arrangements, Uruguay has in its Ministry of Housing, Land Planning and Environment the focal point for the UNFCCC and its implementation. We have also ratified, of course, the Convention and the Kyoto Protocol, and we have developed in 2009 the National Climate Change Response System, which is an institutional arrangement which includes almost all ministries, the subnational governments, and also as a framework, we also engage with civil society, the private sector, and academia. We also have ratified, of course, Paris Agreement last year, and we have, during last year and this one, having further engaged on our institutional arrangements, and we have created the National Environment, Water and Climate Change Secretariat at presidential level, and also a National Environment System and a National Environment Cabinet that has just started their work. Also, for the relevant facts of Uruguay, our economy is based in agro-industrial chains and tourism. Of course, that will also be related to our emission profile. We are also, of course, a very vulnerable country to climate change in terms of both of our relations to agriculture and the way we produce food, and also to our coastal areas. We have also developed a very clean energy electric matrix with 95% of electricity and 55% of our global primary mix coming from renewable energy. And from 2003 to 2014, our economy has grown up on a 4.7% annual average. This is the highest and the long-lasting growth that Uruguay has in all its history, and having also reduced poverty from 40% to 9%. This is the context that we're presenting our inventory and our BUR results. This is the summary of our inventory in terms of gas mass in each of their own mass. There's no CO2 equivalent in here. As you can see, well, the data is too small, but in large terms, we do have a very important profile in our agriculture sector, and also our LULUCF sector is a net remover of CO2 emissions. In this next slide, you can see right now in CO2 equivalent for both GWP and GTP metrics, how is the profile of our inventory in terms of sector. As you can see, agriculture is our first sectors in terms of emission. This is quite unusual in the profiles of emissions worldwide. So we indeed have a very specific approach to the issue of agriculture, especially the issue of livestock. And then we have energy and waste, and last, industrial processes. This is the evolution between 1990 and 2010. Actually, we are very happy that we are able to present this slide. We understand that having achieved so many inventories through the years, and also with the support of the work done under the BUR, that allows us to have a very important historical evolution of emissions that is also very useful for us in terms of planning and policy making on issues regarding mitigation as well. As you can see, here the table also express the emissions evolution in both metrics, GWP and GTP. It starts in 1990. We do not have inventory for 1992 as well as for 1996, but then after 98 we have it every 2 years. As you can also see, our LULUCF has a lot of remotions in our CO2 in Uruguay. There are some years that there has been very important CO2 remotions in terms of our CO2 emissions, even surpassing that remotion. And we are seeing also that our emissions are somehow related to our economic development. If you can see in the middle 2002-2004, we see there a low in our emission that also relates to our economic crisis in those years. Also, in this issue of economy, as some colleagues, countries previous said, that there is a very interesting relation between both economy and emissions, and we also are trying to work on that for future planning, also in terms of our NDC, trying to address the issue of emission from an intensity aspect. In relation to mitigation policies and action, and this is something that we have discussed a lot in Uruguay when presenting our first BUR, is that indeed the guidelines relate to very specific actions, and so they are measured. However, we saw that for the case in Uruguay, we have these three very large, very important specific policies. The first is the energy policy that was developed in 2008 with a view of 2030. Also, our smart agriculture policy of 2010, and our old forestry framework that was developed in the 1980s. Those three policies have huge impact in terms of our emissions profile. Our energy policy, for example, has reached in 2016, as we said, 96% of renewable energy in our electric matrix, being that 22%. However, since this BUR relates to the 2010 GHG inventory, there we only have 38 megawatts of wind energy in 2010. Currently, we're at 1,211 megawatts. So in a way, what we're seeing is that the effect of these policies will be better perceived in our inventories during the next years. Also, regarding our smart agriculture policy, we see the issue of agriculture, as you saw in our profile, as a very strategic one in terms of mitigation action. And our reasoning behind this is that we need to deliver not to affect food production, but however, try to reduce the intensity of emissions in per kilogram or per unit of especially beef production. And we are also having this view to reduce by 33% our intensity in terms of methane for 2030, as was from 1990. Regarding forestry, we have seen very important developments of forestry in Uruguay from the 1980s to the present, especially in the decade of 1990, as you saw in our and initially in the first half of the decade of 2000, as you saw in our inventory, where we have expanded almost in 700,000 hectares plantations all across Uruguay. So in a way, this also has a huge impact on our emissions as well. In our BUR, we also included the 7 NAMAs we have presented to the UNFCCC registry, and we also are very interested. Some of those relates specifically to the issues of energy and also to agriculture and forestry. And also regarding our domestic MRV, we of course have presented our national greenhouse gas inventory, but we also want to relate our inventory with also major statistics, a major framework we have for also taking into account policy making measures. Specifically, 2 of those sources are the agriculture statistics that are the last 12 to 13 years that are all online. You can address those. They are very detailed and they're actually very useful in terms of the basic data for our inventory, and also the national energy balance. That is one of the long-lasting energy balances in Latin America. From last year, we accomplished our 15th anniversary of this energy balance. That actually is also very useful in terms of input for our emissions in the energy sector. In relation to support needed, what we have presented is this table that relates all of the mitigation actions that we have included in our INDC. And we have this qualitative analysis, whether those needed support in terms of capacity, in terms of finance, or in terms of technology. And we relate those actions with this area of support. And we have however, we have bring this forward, but we also look to have this much more in detail in the next BURs, specifically in our first NDC as well. Regarding support received, we have, of course, included the financial support to comply with the commitments under UNFCCC, specifically the NATCOMs, the BUR, and TNA. We have also received very specific training materials from CGE and workshops on the GHG inventories, mitigations, and BUR that we understand that were very useful for us in developing our BUR and also our national transparency framework. We also have some, we call it leveraging policies that somehow actually strengthening, for example, in our institutional arrangements may also allow us to achieve more in terms of specific measures on mitigations. And we also have are receiving some financial support to overcome some specific barriers and financing pilots, especially from GEF, and now we're also presenting the capacity building initiative for transparency project as well. Some of the lessons learned we have achieved during the ICA process. First is the strengthening of our national inventory working group that is within the National Climate Change Response System. This working group assisted the developments from already from 2010, the development of the inventory. However, during the ICA process, we have the opportunity to receive feedback, very specific feedback on our work. And this had allows for these working groups to strengthen, to have deeper research, deeper understanding of their work, and we've seen this as very useful. We also, having received some of this specific feedback, we have also already improved our 2012 inventory that was presented last year in our 4th national communication. And we have also find some very specific inputs for our second BUR project proposal that is already underway, and very specific inputs for the elaboration of our project on their capacity building initiative for transparency. Being Uruguay, one of the few very first countries that have this CBIT approved and is currently under project elaboration. We also very much appreciate the issue that the TTE spoke Spanish, and we can relate in Spanish with those experts, and also in relations to our working group. And also, of course, the support from the Secretariat on the ICA process that we understood was essential in order to keep the pace of the work and also to achieve very concrete output in this way as well. Well, addressing some of the key questions that were presented to us, we received 5 questions from the EU and 1 question from New Zealand that was presented by the platform. As we say, we have give the answers, and they were sent by email earlier today, and we're also looking forward for those to be at the platform as well. We make some 4 big clusters of these questions. The one relates to constraint gaps and improvements in the LULUCF section of our inventory. Also the combination of 1996 and 2006 IPCC guidelines. Also the issue of high tier on key categories. And last, which is a much more broad question, that this is also related to several questions that we have received, a much broad approach, is the institutional arrangements and MRV system. In these regards, I would like to address this first cluster of questions that we as a general issue see that one of the main constraints and gaps are related, of course, to availability and heterogeneity of the quality of the national data to elaborate the GAG inventory. And specifically on the LULUCF category A, which is changes in forest and other woody biomass stocks, we have available data that is quite detailed, but present some inconsistencies. That is something that we are working on. I will address this immediately. However, all of the other categories where we have no information available, or is disaggregated or spread out over different institutions, or is not consistent in time series. So in our BUR, we only specifically address this category A, that we have the best information. However, we are making very specific improvement actions regarding LULUCF. We are currently working on an FAO process assisted by FAO using the Collect Earth tool, which we are monitoring land use and land use changes in 2000 by satellite information. And we are currently validating this information, and we will like to see this to be able to include this in our next GAG inventory. Also, in a framework of a GEF project that we are developing, we are taking into consideration the issue of carbon sequestration of soils, which is a very technical, very complicated issue. And of course, it relates very much to the profile of emissions that we have in Uruguay. And last, we also have engaged, as we say, on the preparation of the project for the CBIT. And of course, one of the main areas that we would like to see improvements and work is on the LULUCF, especially on the issue of carbon pools that are currently not estimated, such as soil organic carbon. So in a way, we already find out some of these gaps that we have, and we are looking forward to work on them in the next months and years, and also this to be reflected on our next inventories and our next BUR. Regarding the issue of the combination of 1996 and 2006 IPCC guidelines, we have some very specific work done on the sector of waste, where we have used some 2006 emission factors. However, the mass balance sector method has been discouraged, and since it produces results if we mix those guidelines. So in our 2012 GAG inventory, we have provided with very specific arrangements to deal with this issue, and we have come out with the inventory dealing only with the 2006 guidelines as well as is recommended. We also have a mix of guidelines in the energy sectors, where, for example, we on the international bunkers, we use IPCC default values. Currently, we are undertaking different actions to analyze the needs and gaps for the implementation of 2006 IPCC guidelines on different sectors of the inventory, not waste, as already said, that we have already engaged on that. And we have on our interministerial GIG working group, one of the activities for this year is to analyze how to include the 2006 IPCC guidelines for energy, industrial processes. In a way, we are making progress on that, seeing what are the gaps and constraints that we have in order for us to move to 2006 guidelines. We have also worked on the agricultural sector, and in our next inventory, we'll be being prepared with 2006 IPCC guidelines. As we say, we have also included this issue of constraints and gaps to finalize our work on 2006 guidelines in our CBIT project preparation document. Regarding the third issue of higher tier on key categories, we have included in our VUR our experience in developing a national factor for cattle from entering fermentation. We call it the next factor in pastures and paddocks for non-dairy cattle. This has been a very important improvement in our emission inventory, since this is one of the key strategic sector and key categories. And we have already in the next, this was in 2004, the first GIG inventory that we used in national factor, but on the latest inventories, we have also achieved to determine adjustments for this national factor, so we're having better information to report. However, we found some gaps and challenges in moving to higher methodologies, mainly on two issues. The first, of course, the provision of activity data in terms of required by the guidelines for tier 2 factors for report, and also the need for national emission factors. We understand that the conditions and assuming factors may not reflect accurately the national reality, so we look also forward to have support on the areas of emission factor for us to develop more accurate information and also to higher key tier in key categories. Also, on the last broad question that was on institutional arrangements and MRV systems, as we said, we have this national climate change response system where we have our GIG emission working group. That is our main institutional arrangements to deal with the inventory. And in there, we have, of course, the participation of several ministries, but the most important ones, of course, Ministry of Environment, Agriculture, and Energy. We also have decided to create a specific MRV working group, and that's going to start its work at the end of the year. This will not only relate to very specific emission related issues, but rather policy options in terms of both mitigation and adaptation in terms of MRV. But we've seen a very important work going on together between the GIG working group and the MRV working group in relations to mitigation policies and actions and in emissions. And also in relations to the framework for MRV, what we are, the way we understanding is that the inventory is our key process for MRV, but this also relates to all these frameworks of departments and statistics and series of information that occur cross-cuttingly around government, and we are seeing that as a barrier or as a challenge, the way of integration and also translation. How do we translate specific energy information to emissions? And we also are working with the agency for evaluation of policies at national and the presidential office, and also the agency for e-government development, our presidential office. Both agencies relates to this idea of having information integration and also the evaluations of policies. And we see that our MRV systems in relation to climate change policies and also mitigation measures are need to be in this overall framework of evaluation policies. We also like to address last the issue of some gaps in terms of mitigation actions MRV. As we have said, when we deal with the measures, we tend to look at the whole policy framework of actions. However, it's been somehow difficult when to track down specific actions, and that needs specific methodologies. Well, this was our last slide. Of course, we welcome questions being addressed from the floor. Thank you very much, Madam Rapporteur.
Thank you. Uruguay, actually, you already answered a lot of questions, as I see. So the floor is open for questions now. New Zealand, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Uruguay, for the presentation, and also congratulations on publishing your first BUR. And we also received the answer to our written question, I think it was this morning or overnight, so thanks a lot for that. And I guess I've got a bit of a follow-up question on that, which you partly addressed at the end of the presentation there. So in the written answer, you told us that the establishment of an MRV system is considered a high priority for the country. And I understand now you've set up an MRV working group to work on this, but we were just curious to know what the next steps in developing this system might be and when you might expect it to end. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Now Sweden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And Uruguay, thank you very much for the comprehensive presentation of the work. I have a question regarding capacity building needs that have been identified in the technical analysis report of your first BUR. And I wonder if these capacity building needs are the same that you yourself have identified in your prioritization. And I also wonder if you have identified any priority needs that could be addressed in the short term, that is, could they be implemented in time for the submission of your next BUR? Thank you.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I wish to congratulate the distinguished representative of Uruguay on the clarity and completeness of his presentation. Uruguay has a very successful policy of diversification of the country's energy matrix, with a tremendous increased participation of renewables. Uruguay also has sound institutional arrangements related to climate change, particularly the national system to respond to climate change. So in the spirit of sharing best practices, could you further elaborate on those very successful policies? Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. And I'll give floor to EU for the last question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Buenas tardes. Congratulations for your first BUR, and thank you also for your very clear presentation and the answers that you provided to us in the written phase. You explained that you are developing an assessment of gaps and constraints and needs to adopt the 2006 IPCC guidelines, and that you are also starting or planning to start training activities for the 2006 guidelines for the relevant ministries. Are you planning to use the 2006 IPCC guidelines in your next BUR? First question, and more in general, if you had to rank or select your top 3 priorities related to future inventory improvements, what would this be? Thank you.
Thank you, EU. Uruguay, you have the floor to answer all the questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Rapporteur, and thank all parties for your very important questions. We really appreciate your engagement on our presentation. Regarding the first question from the distinguished delegate from New Zealand, the issue of the MRV and the next steps. Indeed, we have, as we said, last year we developed our national climate change policy. In there, we have several dimensions of the policy. One dimension is the dimension of implementation, where we included very specific provisions on MRV. And this, from this perspective, as we said, of the transparency, but also the effectiveness of the literacy on policy making. And this is a framework right now for us. in order for us to develop our concrete actions on this matter. We have created this working group that we understand that will bring specific proposals, specific solutions for us to, for example, using all these frameworks of reports that we have, as we said, the agricultural statistics, the energy balance, and how that we can connect those frameworks of information in order for us to track our climate change policy making and action. What we are envisage is for us not to create another different mechanism for MRV, but rather to incorporate and have the best use of the information available that already has their budget, their processes ongoing, so how to make the best use. And this is on one side. On the other side, it relates specifically to the issue of our NDC. We understand that first, in a very high-level approach, we need to have very specific information and follow-up indicators to track down the progress of our NDC. So in a way, this is also another issue that we want to take a look in this working group, is the things that we are presenting in our NDC, how they relate to this framework of information, and how we start making bridges. And the third thing is that in our policy, in our national climate change policy, we have also presented some specific measures for both adaptation and mitigation that we want also to be part of this MRV system. And this relates, this main constraint that we have relates to a very specific issue that we said last, that we have some difficulties in terms of the methodologies to use to assess progress in mitigation, very specific mitigation actions. When we deal with the energy sector or the agriculture sector, the forestry sector at a very large scale, aggregated scale, we can see that on the inventory, but we are looking to see in some very specific actions how can we track down more like in a project-based approach. And this is also something that we are envisaged to take a look in this MRV group. Of course, we said that we have decided to create this. This will start working probably at the second or third trimester. I'm sorry, third or fourth trimester. What we want to end first is our first NDC. We are finishing our work there. So we want this relation between, as we said, our indicators and our goals in the NDC, and how they also came up as a very clear frame for this working group to work on. Regarding the question made by distinguished delegate of Sweden, thank you very much for your question. Indeed, we have presented some capacity building needs. So the ones that are presented on the report, I believe there's 4 specific capacity building needs that the TTE identify. We actually concur with those capacity building needs. We have seen that well, for example, the issue of QA and QC plan, we have also identified this in our work. Of course, the use of land use change, this is a major issue for us, as we already addressed. And the issue, for example, the third is just the issue what we're discussing with our colleagues here of integration of information, not only to have better reporting, but also integrating the information that is already there. And also the issue of designing and implementing a methodology for identifying gaps, how to further develop the understanding of our gaps and what are the next steps. So this is also very specific. We have also, we concur with these gaps, but we also have included those in, for example, our CVIT proposal. We try to engage with these constraints as well, and we would like for us to advance on these issues as soon as possible. Regarding the questions from our colleague from Brazil, we thank you very much for your question. In this regard, I understand Brazil, from a best practice perspective, wanted to hear our experience on the issue of energy in our energy policy and also our institutional framework. Regarding the energy policy, we do believe we have there a good lesson for us to share and to communicate with other colleagues globally. The first main lesson of this policy is that is a political agreement within government, but also with other political parties. We have achieved this dialogue of envisioning the policy, our energy policy for the future, and we had agreed this also in an inter-party document that we have achieved in 2010. This energy matrix established very relevant goals for 2030, but also sequential goals that are in 2010 and 2015. So in a way, it's incremental, and it presents you with a future, but also the way to achieve that future in very specific steps. And the first thing, as I told you, was this political agreement. The second one is somehow the leading role of the government. We of course very much welcome the huge financial investment, private financial investment that came to Uruguay in this matter, but we understand that this has been allowed because of the framework of policies and the very dedicated work of the government in leading this process to have a very clear indication of where we are going. In this regard, we have received, I guess, in the last 10 years on this increase of wind energy, around 17% of GDP investment or foreign investment for wind energy. And we have also achieved these very relevant numbers in terms of participation of wind and energy in the electric matrix. But not only wind, we also have start to include, we have photovoltaic energy, and also very important relevant use of biomass for energy as well. Of course, we are an agriculture country, and if we also deal with biomass as a source of renewable energy, we also take care of waste, and we also take of these ideas of having our waste being also a product for energy. So this is very good. And we also have, as was also mentioned before, a very strategic approach to biofuels as well. And this is also very important for us. In terms of the national institutions, yes, we believe that we need to have the government as leader of the process, but we need to have a very wide open framework for all institutions, both public and private, to engage. And actually, the way we produce this national climate change policy was indeed a process where we invited civil society, the academia, and the private sector for us to come up with a general agreement on how do we see our policies in climate change for 2050, but also very concrete steps in the middle. So having this national climate change response system in place allow us for the framework for that discussions to happen. And last, the question brought by distinguished delegate of EU. Thank you very much for your questions. Regarding the 2006 guidelines for our next BUR, as I already placed, we are developing the agricultural sector in 2006 guidelines. And as we said, this is one of the most relevant sector in terms of emissions. We are also making some improvements on LULUCF with this tool of by FAO. That gives you both the information in both the guidelines. And we are currently exploring how to bridge our common reporting on the energy sector using 1996 to 2006. We in this stage, we are not sure whether we will be able to include those in our inventory for 2014 that will be released this year. But we are doing the work right now, trying to figure it out. And of course, when we come back to Uruguay, we will have some couple of meetings where we will be starting to see how distant we are to engage on 2006 guidelines. But if possible, we will of course looking forward for making as much progress as we can in this year as well. And regarding priorities, of course, the issue of LULUCF is indeed a very important priority. I believe this is something that is cross-cutting from all our parties because it's a very detailed, very characteristic, very specific sector. We also see we have seen also some improvements on the issue of waste. but we can see there that we can also have some improvement there as well. Of course, this is not as a relevant sector in terms of emissions, so of course as it relates to LULUCF, for example, and also a priority, as we have said, this issue of the integration of MRV. We understand that this is very relevant, because if we put that in place, we will have the best use of the information that we already have, that we are already collecting, and the linkages between, for example, the energy balance and how that relates to emissions. If we can make those bridges work on, we will be making also our next inventories in a much more simplified, more direct engagement way, and also in terms of timing, because for example, our energy statistics comes, and then we have to start working on our emissions. But if we do this at the same time, we will also be much faster in delivering our inventory as well.
Thank you, Uruguay, for your presentation on all the explanations you provided. Actually, the delegates and colleagues, we have now heard from all parties scheduled for this FSV workshop. I would like to congratulate you on actively engaging in very fruitful discussions and contributing to the positive and constructive atmosphere in the room, which reflects the true spirit and principles of the international consultation and analysis process. During this workshop, we have heard a wide array of experiences from 10 non-Annex 1 countries that span across different regions. From these discussions, we learned that even small countries can have great ambition, and that the MRV system provides a foundation for solid data that could help inform policy decisions at the national level. From these presentations, we also understood the unique challenges faced by countries, and that these challenges have been addressed based on each country's capacities and capabilities. Also, by participating in the ICA process, countries have benefited from the feedback received and those actions enacted before or during the preparation of the INDC are now revisited, taking into account the experience in the ICA. The questions raised during this session aim to seek further clarity on experiences, lessons learned, and best practices, as well as challenges encountered, constraints, and capacity building needs. The 10 countries undergoing facilitative sharing of views answered the questions they received in a transparent manner, and shared how the international community can assist them in continuing to improve their national MRV systems, among other needs, in order to be better prepared to address the challenges they encounter. It is our responsibility to make sure that these lessons are shared widely, and this process accelerates our collective transition towards a low-emission economy. The next round of SFV will be conducted as SBI 47 in November 2017. It is my sincere hope that this process continues to serve as an example for the international community by providing a platform where parties feel comfortable sharing their strengths and capacity building needs, while simultaneously building trust and confidence in the current MRV framework. The positive experiences we have gained from this process will lay a solid foundation for the new transparency arrangements under the Paris Agreement. I thank you all.